Let's be honest, most men think attraction starts with the eyes or ends with the body, but the truth is far more unsettling than that. The first thing a mature woman wants touched isn't her skin, and it isn't her heart either. It's something quieter, something most men never even notice they're stepping on. And the reason this matters is because once you miss it, you can't force your way back in. The door doesn't slam, it simply never opens. I'm telling you this as someone who has watched thousands of men do everything right on the surface, confident posture. Good job. Charm polished to a shiny and still feel invisible to the very women they desire. Not rejected loudly, not humiliated, just overlooked. And that silence, that's where the lesson hides. A mature woman has already been touched in all the obvious ways. Compliments no longer impress her. Attention doesn't intoxicate her. Desire doesn't confuse her. She's felt all of that before, sometimes too early, sometimes too often. So when you approach her the way you were taught, leading with pursuit, proving impressing, you're not awakening anything new. You're repeating a pattern she already survived. What she once touched first is her sense of safety in her own mind. Not safety in the childish sense. Not protection from the world. I mean the safety of being seen without being handled. The safety of being understood without being analyzed. The safety of existing in her feminine depth without being rushed to perform, please, or reassure. Most men never touch this because they don't even know it exists. They mistake chemistry for connection. They mistake intensity for intimacy. They think escalation equals attraction. But a mature woman feels rushed energy as pressure, not passion, and pressure shuts her down faster than indifference ever could. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The moment you try to move her emotionally before she feels mentally at ease with you, you become noise. She might still smile. She might still talk. She might even still respond. But she has already categorized you as unsuffered dangerous, just invasive. And that category is almost impossible to escape. Touching her mind first means you don't compete for her attention. Respect her rhythm. You don't interrupt her thoughts to insert your own importance. You don't chase clarity to calm your anxiety. You allow silence without trying to fill it. You allow mystery without demanding answers. This is why so many men feel confused when a woman says, "I don't know why, but I just feel comfortable with you." What she's really saying is, you didn't disturb my inner balance. You didn't try to extract something from her. You didn't make her guard her energy. You didn't force momentum where presence was required. And here's where it gets personal. A mature woman can feel desperation even when it's hidden behind confidence. She can feel entitlement disguised as affection. She can feel when your interest is actually a need. The moment she senses that, her mind tightens. And once her mind tightens, nothing else opens. This is the part no one teaches you. Attraction doesn't begin when you touch her body or even her heart. It begins when her nervous system relaxes around you, when her thoughts slow instead of speeding up, when she doesn't feel like she has to manage your expectations. If you've ever wondered why some men seem to do less yet receive more, it's because they touch the one place most men ignore. They touched her inner stillness first, and once that's touched, everything else follows naturally. Once a woman's mind feels safe, something subtle happens inside her hand. This is where most men misread the moment. They think safety equals boredom. They think calm equals lack of spark. So they rush to reintroduce tension, drama, or intensity, believing attraction must be loud to be real. But mature attraction doesn't announce itself. It deepens. A mature woman isn't looking to be entertained. She's already lived through emotional roller coasters, late-night conversations that went nowhere, and passion that burned hot and left ash. What she's craving now is resonance. The feeling that when she speaks, she doesn't have to simplify herself. When she pauses, she isn't punished with impatience. When she disagrees, she isn't threatened with withdrawal. This is where touching her mind first turns into something even more powerful. You touch her dignity. Dignity is the part of her that remembers being talked over, being misunderstood, being made to feel like her standards were too much. When you don't challenge her boundaries, when you don't mock her caution, when you don't try to negotiate her values, you send a message deeper than any compliment ever could. You say without words, you don't have to shrink here. Most men think attraction is built by adding value, status, humor, success, dominance. But with a mature woman, attraction is built by removing friction. You don't impress her by taking up more space. You impress her by not invading hers. Notice how different this feels from traditional advice. There's no chase here, no performance, no emotional bait. And that's exactly why it works, because her guard isn't lowered by force that dissolves on its own. Here's a truth that might sting a little. A mature woman doesn't open up to the man who wants her most. She opens up to the man who wants something from life beyond her. Not because she wants to be ignored, but because she wants to be chosen freely, not desperately. When your life has direction, when your emotional state isn't dependent on her reaction, her mind relaxes. She senses she's not responsible for regulating you. That sense of emotional self-sufficiency is deeply attractive, but not in the way social media talks about. It's not about coldness, it's about groundedness. She feels that you're solid whether she leans in or steps back. And that stability touches something primal inside her, the part that's tired of carrying emotional weight for other people. This is also why mature women are drawn to men who listen differently. Not the kind of listening that waits for a turn to speak, but the kind that absorbs without trying to fix. When she shares something personal and you don't rush to solve it, correct it, or turn it into advice, you touch her mind again. You tell her your experience doesn't need improvement to be valid. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, her attraction grows not because you tried to create it, but because you didn't disrupt it. Men often ask, when do I make a move? But that question itself reveals the misunderstanding. With a mature woman, the moment arrives on its own when her mind has already decided you're safe, grounded, and self-contained. By the time anything physical happens, it feels inevitable, not initiated. If you learn to touch her dignity, her rhythm, and her mental peace before anything else, you stop being just another option. You become the place she can exhale. And that is rare. When a mature woman finally exhales around you, she begins to reveal something most men never get to see at her vulnerability, but her discernment. This is where attraction either deepens into connection or quietly fades into polite distance. And the difference isn't what you do, it's how you respond when she shows you who she really is. At this stage, she's no longer testing your confidence. She's observing your consistency. She's watching whether your energy stays steady when things slow down, whether your interest remains respectful when there's no immediate reward, whether your presence is still calm when uncertainty appears. Because a mature woman has learned that chaos doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes it arrives disguised as charm. Here's the part most men don't realize. Once you've touched her mind, she becomes extremely sensitive to emotional incongruence. If your words say patience but your tone carries urgency, she feels it. If your compliments sound generous, but your behavior feels transactional, she feels it. And the moment she senses mismatch, her attraction doesn't explode, it evaporates. This is why so many men feel like things were going great until they suddenly weren't. From her perspective, nothing sudden happened. She simply noticed something she couldn't unsee. A subtle push, a hidden expectation, a need for reassurance that hadn't been there before. A mature woman doesn't punish these moments. She withdraws quietly not to manipulate, but to protect her inner equilibrium. Her nervous system remembers the cost of ignoring small discomforts. So when something feels off, she listens. Touching her discernment means you don't panic when distance appears. You don't demand explanations. You don't chase clarity to soothe your own anxiety. You stay anchored. You allow space without resentment. And paradoxically, that space often restores the very connection men fear losing. There's a deeper reason for this. A mature woman associates emotional pressure with past exhaustion. When you remove pressure, you remove the past. You become present, and presence is what allows her to choose you without fear. This is also where many men accidentally reveal their deepest insecurity. Need to be chosen to feel worthy. The moment she senses that your self-esteem rises or falls based on her attention, her mind tightens again. Not because she doesn't care, but because she knows where that path leads. Emotional responsibility she never agreed to carry. A man who touches her mind correctly doesn't collapse into distance, but he doesn't chase it either. He remains curious, grounded, and self-directed. He lets her come forward at her own pace. And when she does, it feels earned, not extracted. At this level, attraction becomes mutual recognition. She sees that you are not trying to conquer her inner world. You are capable of standing beside it. You don't need access to every thought. You don't need constant reassurance. You don't need to be the center of her emotional universe. And that's what makes you stand out. Because a mature woman isn't searching for intensity. She's searching for relief. Relief from emotional labor. Relief from unspoken expectations. Relief from being the stabilizing force in every connection. When she feels that relief with you, her attraction shifts from interest to trust. And trust, once established, awakens a depth of desire that no strategy can manufacture. Most men never reach this point because they mistake restraint for weakness, but restraint, when rooted in self-respect, is magnetic. It tells her you don't need to prove anything, and that quiet confidence touches her mind in a way that lingers long after you're gone. At this point, something shifts inside her that few men ever witness, and even fewer understand. When a mature woman begins to trust you, she doesn't become softer in the way movies portray. She becomes clearer, more honest, more selective with her energy. And if you're not prepared for that clarity, you can lose everything without a single argument ever happening. This is where touching her mind first reveals its real consequence. She starts showing you her truth instead of her performance. A mature woman has learned how to be agreeable. She knows how to be charming. She knows how to keep things smooth. But when she feels mentally safe, she stops managing the connection. She stops cushioning her words. She starts expressing what she actually wants, what she actually feels, and what she will no longer tolerate. Many men mistake this moment as conflict. They hear boundaries and assume rejection. They hear honesty and assume dissatisfaction. But what's really happening is far more intimate. She's inviting you into her reality without filters. How you respond here determines everything. If you get defensive, she closes. If you explain instead of listening, she distances. If you try to negotiate her boundaries, she detaches. Not emotionally dramatic, mentally final. Because a mature woman doesn't argue to be understood anymore. She observes who is capable of understanding without force. Touching her mind at this level means you don't personalize her truth. You don't hear her standards as criticism. You don't hear her needs as demands. You hear them as information, and you stay present without trying to reshape them to fit your comfort. This is rare, and she knows it. Most men want the benefits of a mature woman's depth without the responsibility of meeting her clarity. They want her loyalty, her softness, her intimacy only if it comes without inconvenience. A mature woman senses this immediately, and when she does, her attraction doesn't turn into anger. It turns into disengagement. But if you can sit with her clarity without shrinking or posturing, something powerful happens. She relaxes into her femininity naturally, not because she's trying to please you, but because she no longer has to protect herself from you. Here's a truth that's rarely said out loud. A mature woman becomes deeply feminine in the presence of a man who can emotionally contain her honesty, not control it. Contain it. There's a difference. Control feels restrictive. Containment feels safe when you don't flinch at her depth. Her emotions soften. When you don't punish her truth, her warmth increases. When you don't take her boundaries personally, her desire becomes personal. This is also where polarity quietly ignites. Not through dominance or submission, but through emotional leadership. You lead by staying grounded when things get real. You lead by responding instead of reacting. You lead by being steady when vulnerability enters the room. A mature woman doesn't fall for words at this stage. She falls for regulation, your ability to stay calm, present, and self-respecting. When intimacy deepens, tells her more than any promise ever could. And here's the paradox. The less you try to secure her, the more secure she feels with you, because she senses you're not afraid of losing her. Not because you don't care, but because you trust yourself. That trust touches something ancient in her. The part that's tired of emotional chaos, the part that longs to rest, the part that wants to choose, not be chased. If you can hold her clarity without resistance, you don't just become attractive, you become irreplaceable. Now comes the moment most men think they've been preparing for, the point where desire and intimacy meet. But with a mature woman, It doesn't arrive like a spark. It arrives like recognition. She doesn't need to be one with charm or effort. She needs to feel that her inner world has been acknowledged and respected, that her mind has been touched before her body, that her presence matters without negotiation. This is where emotional safety and respect become magnetism. She doesn't fall for intensity disguised as love. She doesn't respond to persistence disguised as care. She responds to the quiet mastery of a man who knows how to hold his energy, who doesn't need validation from her response to feel complete. Because a mature woman knows that dependence disguised as confidence is weak, and she can feel it immediately. Touching her mind first means observing her without interruption, listening without strategizing, appreciating her perspective without judging or correcting, allowing her to be fully herself while maintaining your own centered presence. It's not passive, it's intentional, it's magnetic because it creates a space where she can exhale fully, not perform, not guard, not anticipate. Many men misread this as inaction. They panic. They try to accelerate intimacy to fill the space with words, gestures, or pressure, believing attraction needs momentum. But the opposite is true. With a mature woman, the momentum is already internal. Your presence is the catalyst, not the performance. When you don't chase, when you don't over-explain, when you respect her boundaries, desire grows on its own. It grows quietly, steadily, powerfully. This is also where patience transforms into strategy. Not the kind of strategy that manipulates, calculates, or pressures. The strategy that matters is awareness. The awareness that her energy is not yours to control. The awareness that intimacy cannot be demanded. It can only be invited. And the more consistently you offer safety and respect, the more she chooses to lower her guard voluntarily. Another truth men rarely understand. Mature attraction is built on the absence of need. The absence of need doesn't mean indifference. It means self-containment. It means your life, your confidence, your identity, and your emotional balance don't depend on her validation. And a woman senses that immediately. When she does, the very act of being around you becomes refreshing, magnetic, irresistible. And here's the subtle genius of touching her mind first. Once she trusts you mentally, her desire naturally follows. Her body, her voice, her energy, all align with the permission you gave her through your presence, not your pressure. You don't have to coax her. You don't have to impress her. You simply become the man whose stability, attentiveness, and respect make her feel safe enough to explore attraction without fear. This is why so many men feel invisible to women they truly desire. They misunderstand what touches first. They start with charm, with ambition, with energy. But they neglect the one thing that matters more than words or gestures, the mind, the mental space, the unspoken permission to relax, to reveal, to want. A mature woman doesn't need your validation. She needs your constancy. She doesn't need your pursuit. She needs your presence. And when you provide that first, the rest, the chemistry, the connection, the intimacy follows as naturally as breath. Her attraction isn't earned through effort. It's awakened by understanding. And most men never even know they've missed the something crucial. The first thing a mature woman once touched isn't her body, and it isn't even her heart. It's her mind. And once you've truly touched it, everything else, the desire, the chemistry, the intimacy merges naturally, almost effortlessly. But here's the harsh reality. Most men never get this because they misunderstand timing, boundaries, and presence. They think desire is created through pursuit. They think attraction is built by pressure, and that's exactly why so many of them fail. When you approach her mind first, you are giving her the rarest gift a man can offer. Unshakable safety without sacrificing your own power. You're showing that your interest in her is not transactional, not conditional, not needy. You're demonstrating that your presence is steady, your energy is contained, and your attention is deliberate. This touches her in ways compliments, gifts, or physical gestures never could. It speaks directly to her feminine instinct, the part of her that knows when a man is secure enough to be trusted. A mature woman has spent years filtering out men who create friction disguised as affection. She has felt the exhaustion of emotional labor that comes from partners who need constant reassurance. She has learned to recognize the difference between a man who can contain himself in a man who requires containment. And here's the unspoken secret. The man who can contain himself first wins the mind, then the heart, and finally the body, not the other way around. Once her mind is touched, she begins to relax, to lower her guard, and to let her authentic self emerge. She feels seen, not managed, heard, not corrected, appreciated, not performed for. And this is where attraction transforms from mere interest into something magnetic, almost undeniable. Because when a woman feels mentally safe, her nervous system begins to align with yours, and desire flows naturally. It's not forced, it's inevitable. Here's the part that most men overlook. Touching her mind isn't a one-time act, a rhythm, a consistency, a presence that never wavers under pressure. She notices the subtle patterns. How you respond when she's honest, how you remain grounded when she's emotional, how you allow silence without feeling it. Every choice you make sends her nervous system a message. I am safe here. You don't need to protect yourself from me. And that is more seductive than any touch, any compliment, any display of wealth or status. So if you want to truly attract a mature woman, stop trying to rush intimacy. Stop trying to impress her. Stop trying to win her with superficial energy. Begin by touching her mind. First, create a space where she can be herself without judgment, where her thoughts are valued, where her boundaries are honored. When you do that, everything else, the connection, the chemistry, the intimacy becomes a natural extension of the trust you've built. Now, I want you to think carefully. If presence plus respect equals deep attraction, what's the one habit you can change today that will make a mature woman feel this with you? Drop your answer in the comments. Like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend who needs to hear this truth. Your actions start the moment your mind touches hers.